Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're unpacking a really transformative framework derived from Thomas Alethia's expansive guide, 12 Steps to a Good Life, The Hero's Journey Through Knowledge and Wisdom. We're going to look at how combining ancient philosophical wisdom with the deeply practical, gritty structure of modern recovery can actually build a profound, meaningful life. And look, I'll be straight with you. There are absolutely no magic pills here. This is just a solid, incredibly actionable roadmap.
Right off the bat, I want you to think about this for a second. Have you ever felt a quiet, persistent ache? Like you're just stuck, or like you're missing something fundamental? You know, it's not necessarily tied to a specific traumatic event or some big failure. It's just there. It's this invisible weight, this undercurrent running through literally everything you do, completely shaping how you see the world, regardless of how many goals you actually achieve.
Okay, let's dive into this because Henry David Thoreau actually hit the nail right on the head when he said, "The mass of men lead lives of quiet desperation." It's totally validating, right? It shows that this struggle isn't some modern curse of the internet age, and it is definitely not a personal flaw that you need to somehow cure. It's a perennial human condition. In fact, the author of our source text mentions he spent 50 years trying to quote-unquote fix himself, chasing distractions, chasing accomplishments, you name it, before he finally realized that this underlying tension we all feel is entirely universal.
Which brings us nicely to our first major section, the perennial struggle, recognizing the ache. Because before we can navigate out of this, we need to clearly identify it.
Do you see yourself in any of these? We're talking about things like self-sabotage, that brutal imposter syndrome, chronic indecision, where you're just totally paralyzed by the fear of making the wrong choice, or maybe just a lingering existential anxiety. Well, here's the absolute crucial takeaway. These aren't weaknesses. Actually, scratch that. They aren't character defects at all. They are simply symptoms. They are giant red flags waving around, trying to tell us that the internal rules we're using to navigate the world just aren't quite right for the reality we live in.
Let's move to and see how this builds in our next section, Crashing into Reality, Why We Suffer.
See, we all inherit these rigid childhood worldviews. When we're kids, we internalize these completely arbitrary and frankly contradictory rules. We're taught things like, hey, always be smart, always be perfect, or good people never get angry, right? But then we grow up and we face actual reality, which is incredibly complex, highly unpredictable, and requires massive adaptability. So what happens? Boom. Pain happens right at the collision point of these two things. We suffer because we're treating the messy, unpredictable real world as if it should perfectly obey our rigid little childhood rules.
When that collision inevitably happens, we generally see three scenarios for change. Scenario 1, you crash into reality. It's like confidently walking face first into a closed glass door because you just assumed it was open. It's completely preventable pain caused by our own blind spots. Scenario 2, reality crashes into you. Think of a sudden illness or an economic downturn, events totally outside your control. But scenario 3, and this is where the whole shebang shifts, is the ultimate goal. You participate in reality. Instead of crashing, the author compares this to an eagle just effortlessly gliding on an invisible thermal current, or a surfer riding a massive wave. You aren't trying to force reality to change, you're actively partnering with it.
So if participating in reality is how we do it, what exactly is the destination? What is a good life, really? Moving beyond fleeting happiness. Because honestly, we need to dismantle the myth right now that a good life is just about chasing magical, temporary highs.
The text points us back to this ancient, brilliant concept from Aristotle, eudaimonia. It's often translated as the highest good, and it represents this deep, profound well-being achieved over an entire lifetime by living a rational, virtuous life. Listen, happiness is fickle. It really is. It's a byproduct of living rightly, not the end goal itself. If you are constantly chasing your next hit of happiness, you are going to be exhausted. We actually have to do the hard work to align our lives with reality if we want to achieve true eudaimonia.
And this brilliantly illustrates the math behind that work. Look at this happiness model. 50% of our baseline happiness is hardwired by our genetics, and a surprisingly low 10% is dictated by our life circumstances. But look at that massive 40% chunk. That 40% represents our daily choices, our routines, our habits. That chunk is entirely in our hands, and that is exactly where we build a good life. To really optimize that 40%, we need a serious framework. Enter the Universal 12 Steps, a roadmap out of the box. Today, we're completely reframing the traditional 12 steps. We're not looking at them as a clinical addiction treatment, but rather as a highly effective secular toolkit for the human condition.
I absolutely love this quote from the source material. It's from an AA member named Jake who says, "You don't necessarily need to be an alcoholic to work them damn steps. It's funny, but it perfectly dismantles the stigma that sometimes surrounds the 12-step program. The author's core argument here is just profound. If this structured system has the power to pull people out of the absolute darkest depths of despair and addiction, well, it absolutely has the power to help anyone optimize their daily life and overcome that perennial struggle we talked about earlier.
So, here's a super concise summary of how those steps actually work. It starts with admitting powerlessness over a struggle and finding a sliver of hope. Then, you rapidly move through surrender, taking a brutally honest personal inventory of your past, and then confessing it. From there, it's about getting completely ready to change, asking for help, making amends for the harm you've caused, and finally, continuing that inventory every single day while helping others. Now, the big secret here. You cannot force transformation. It's exactly like planting a garden. You have to do the grueling work. You dig the dirt, you plant the seed, you pull the weeds, but then you just have to step back, breathe, and allow the change to naturally happen.
So, your hero's journey, transforming your life. Because working these steps is not just checking boxes on a clipboard, it is an epic adventure.
Now, what's really interesting about this slide is how beautifully the 12 steps map directly onto Joseph Campbell's legendary hero's journey. Think of it like a story where you're the main character. Day 1 is your departure. That's steps 1 through 3, where you cross the threshold, leave your comfort zone behind, and just admit you need help. Once you're in, week 1 brings the challenge. Steps 4 and 5, facing the real terror of that deep personal inventory. As you push through that, month 1 reveals a massive turning point, a revelation in step 6, where you're finally ready to just drop your old coping mechanisms. This builds into month 3, where you hit transformation in step 7, and real lasting change starts taking root. By year 1, you reach atonement in steps 8 and 9, actively healing your past. And finally, the rest of your lifetime becomes the return. That's living out steps 10 through 12 to maintain your growth and ultimately make the world a better place. It's a lifelong heroic adventure of leaving what you know, facing the hard truth, and returning completely transformed.
Which leaves us right here. The journey is yours, and the map is officially drawn. We've identified that perennial struggle. We've seen that we actually control a massive 40% of our happiness through our daily choices. And we now have this incredible 12-step framework to guide us through our own heroic adventure. Look, you are the hero of your own story. So, as you look at your own life right now, and maybe those quiet aches you might be carrying around, what will your first step be?